You think you know the story of D-Day? Brave soldiers storming the beaches, massive naval bombardments, the largest amphibious invasion in history. But what if I told you that the weapons German tank crews feared most on June 6, 1944, weren't the Sherman tanks or the artillery barrages, but a collection of bizarre contraptions that looked more like carnival rides than military vehicles? This is the story they don't want you to know. The story of Major General Percy Hobart and his collection of mechanical marvels that the British Army called Hobart's Funnies. How a disgraced general, who was considered too eccentric for conventional command, created the most feared armored vehicles on the Western Front. How machines that breathed fire, swam through water, and laid carpets across minefields became the nightmare that kept German panzer crews awake at night. But this isn't just another tale of military innovation or D-Day heroics. This is the untold story of how Hobart's circus of death, tanks that could clear minefields in minutes, bridges that could be laid under fire, and flamethrowers that could cook crews alive in their steel coffins, revolutionized armored warfare and proved that sometimes the most effective weapons are the ones that look completely insane. Welcome to the secret world of specialized armor, where conventional thinking was abandoned in favor of machines designed for one purpose: to solve the impossible problems that conventional tanks couldn't handle, and to strike terror into the hearts of enemies who thought they understood the rules of armored warfare. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about tank warfare, the nature of military innovation, and the price of underestimating an eccentric genius who refused to accept that some problems were unsolvable. March 15, 1943. Orford Ness, Suffolk, England. Major General Percy Hobart stands in a muddy field, watching what appears to be a tank having a nervous breakdown, spewing flames in all directions, while its crew frantically works to control systems that seem to have been designed by a madman. At 58, Hobart is officially too old and too eccentric for frontline command, a brilliant armored warfare theorist who has been exiled to experimental duties because his ideas are considered too radical for conventional military thinking. Before the war, he pioneered mobile warfare tactics that influenced German blitzkrieg doctrine, but his abrasive personality and unconventional methods made him enemies throughout the British military establishment. "Sir, the Churchill crocodile is experiencing some technical difficulties," reports Major James Chen, Hobart's chief engineer, as another gout of flame erupts from the experimental flamethrower tank. The fuel mixture is burning too hot, and the pressure system keeps malfunctioning. "Excellent," Hobart replies with obvious satisfaction. "If it's giving us trouble, imagine what it'll do to Jerry when he's sitting in a concrete bunker, thinking he's safe from conventional tanks." The Churchill crocodile that's currently malfunctioning in spectacular fashion is just one of dozens of specialized armored vehicles that Hobart has been developing at his secret research facility. Officially, he's working on specialized equipment for assault operations, but in reality, he's creating a mechanical circus that defies every convention of tank design and military doctrine. The problem with conventional tanks, Hobart explains to his team of engineers and designers, is that they're designed to fight other tanks, but the real enemy isn't German panzers. It's the obstacles that prevent tanks from reaching their objectives: minefields, water barriers, concrete fortifications, wire entanglements. We need machines that can solve these problems, not just fight through them. The philosophy that drives Hobart's work represents a fundamental departure from conventional armored warfare thinking. Instead of building bigger guns or thicker armor, he's creating specialized vehicles designed to overcome specific tactical problems that have plagued military operations since the beginning of mechanized warfare. "Every obstacle is a puzzle waiting to be solved," Hobart tells his engineers during one of their design sessions. "Minefields can be cleared, water can be crossed, fortifications can be breached. We just need to build the right machines for each job." The collection of vehicles that emerges from Hobart's workshop looks like something from a science fiction novel rather than a military arsenal. There's the AVRE, Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers, a Churchill tank armed with a massive mortar called a petard that can demolish concrete fortifications with a single shot. The DD, Duplex Drive, Sherman, a swimming tank that can launch from landing craft and drive ashore under its own power. The Crab, a Sherman fitted with a rotating drum, covered in chains that can beat a path through minefields. Each vehicle is designed for a specific problem, explains Lieutenant Colonel Robert Martinez, Hobart's deputy commander. The beauty of the system is that we can combine different vehicles to solve complex tactical situations that would stop conventional forces cold. But the most innovative aspect of Hobart's program isn't the individual vehicles. It's the integrated approach to obstacle clearance that treats specialized armor as part of a comprehensive system rather than isolated solutions. We're not just building individual tanks, Hobart explains to visiting officials from the War Office. We're creating a complete toolkit for amphibious assault operations. Each vehicle has a specific role, but they work together to solve problems that no single machine could handle. The integrated approach requires new tactics, new training methods, and most importantly, new ways of thinking about armored warfare that challenge fundamental assumptions about how tanks should be used in combat. Conventional tank doctrine emphasizes speed, firepower, and armor protection, observes Dr. Sarah Walsh, a civilian engineer who has been working on the project. Hobart's vehicles prioritize problem-solving capability over traditional combat effectiveness. They're tools rather than weapons. But the tool-like nature of Hobart's vehicles doesn't make them less dangerous. It makes them more unpredictable and therefore more frightening to enemies who expect conventional tank tactics. The psychological impact is as important as the tactical capability, Hobart tells his staff during a briefing on the vehicle's combat potential. German tank crews know how to fight Shermans and Churchills. They don't know how to fight a tank that breathes fire, or swims through water, or clears minefields by beating them with chains. The psychological warfare aspect of Hobart's vehicles becomes increasingly important as intelligence reports begin to reveal German concerns about British special weapons that don't fit any known categories of military equipment. Intercepted German communications suggest they're aware of our experimental programs, reports Captain Danny Washington, the intelligence liaison for Hobart's unit. They're calling them Wunderwaffen, wonder weapons, and they're clearly concerned about facing equipment they don't understand. The German concern about Hobart's vehicles reflects their understanding that conventional anti-tank tactics might be ineffective against machines designed for purposes other than tank versus tank combat. How do you fight a tank that can swim? Asks Oberst Klaus Weber during a German intelligence briefing on British special weapons. How do you defend against a vehicle that can clear minefields faster than you can lay them? These machines change the fundamental assumptions of defensive warfare. The German recognition of the threat posed by Hobart's vehicles leads to increased intelligence efforts to understand their capabilities and develop countermeasures. But the secrecy surrounding the program makes accurate assessment extremely difficult. Jerry knows we're building something unusual, observes Major Michael O'Brien, Hobart's security officer, but he doesn't know what it is or how it works. That uncertainty is making him more nervous than any conventional threat. The secrecy surrounding Hobart's program is maintained through a combination of physical security, compartmentalized information, and deliberate disinformation designed to confuse German intelligence about the true nature of the vehicles being developed. We're letting Jerry see just enough to know something's happening, but not enough to understand what it is, Hobart explains to his security team. Fear of the unknown is always more powerful than fear of the known. But maintaining secrecy while developing and testing complex mechanical systems creates its own challenges, particularly when the vehicles require extensive field testing to ensure they'll work under combat conditions. We need to test these machines under realistic conditions, argues Chen during a discussion of testing protocols. Laboratory tests can only tell us so much. We need to know how they'll perform on actual beaches, against real obstacles, under enemy fire. The testing program that develops around Hobart's vehicles involves elaborate simulations of invasion conditions, using captured German equipment and intelligence about enemy defensive positions to create realistic training scenarios. We've built a replica of the Atlantic Wall on the Scottish coast, explains Lieutenant Tommy Kowalski, the training coordinator. Complete with minefields, Concrete bunkers, wire obstacles, and everything else Jerry's likely to throw at us. If our vehicles can work there, they'll work anywhere. The testing reveals both the capabilities and limitations of Hobart's specialized vehicles, leading to continuous refinements and improvements that enhance their effectiveness while addressing operational problems. The Crocodile's flamethrower has a range of 120 yards and can maintain continuous fire for over a minute, reports Sergeant David Park after completing flame tests. But the fuel consumption is enormous, and the vehicle becomes extremely vulnerable once the fuel is exhausted. The operational limitations of specialized vehicles require careful tactical planning and coordination with conventional forces to ensure that they can accomplish their missions without becoming liabilities. These machines are like surgical instruments, Hobart explains to the commanders who will use his vehicles in combat. They're incredibly effective for specific tasks, but they need protection and support to operate successfully. Use them wrong, and they'll be destroyed. Use them right, and they'll solve problems that would otherwise be impossible. The tactical doctrine that emerges from Hobart's program emphasizes the integration of specialized vehicles with conventional forces, creating combined arms teams that can overcome obstacles that would stop either type of unit operating alone. The key is coordination, observes Colonel Jennifer Martinez, who has been developing tactics for using Hobart's vehicles. Conventional tanks provide firepower and protection, while specialized vehicles solve specific problems. Together, they create capabilities that neither could achieve independently. But the most important test of Hobart's vehicles will come not in training exercises or laboratory tests, but in the crucible of actual combat, where their effectiveness will be measured against the most professional and experienced tank crews in the world. Jerry's been fighting tank battles for 5 years, Hobart tells his team as they prepare for the vehicle's combat debut. He knows every trick, every tactic, every weakness of conventional armor, but he's never faced anything like what we've built. That's going to be his downfall. The stage is set for a confrontation that will test whether Hobart's eccentric genius and mechanical marvels can overcome the tactical expertise and combat experience of German panzer forces, and whether innovation can triumph over experience when the stakes are measured in lives and the fate of nations. Act 2, The Machines of War, June 6, 1944, 05:30 hours, Gold Beach, Normandy. The first of Hobart's Funnies emerges from the English Channel like a mechanical sea monster, water streaming from its canvas screens as the D.D. Sherman tank drives up the beach under its own power, defying every German assumption about amphibious warfare. Obergefreiter Hans Müller, commanding a Panzer IV positioned in the dunes overlooking the beach, stares in disbelief at what he's witnessing through his periscope. Mein Gott, the tanks are swimming. How is this possible? The DD duplex drive. Shermans that are emerging from the surf represent one of Hobart's most audacious innovations. Conventional tanks modified with flotation screens and propellers that allow them to launch from landing craft miles offshore and drive to the beach under their own power. It's a capability that German defensive planning never anticipated. Impossible, mutters Hauptmann Klaus Weber, the German company commander, as he watches more swimming tanks emerge from the waves. Tanks cannot swim. This violates the laws of physics and military engineering. But the laws of physics and military engineering have been rewritten by Hobart's engineers, who have solved the fundamental problem of getting heavy armor ashore in the first wave of an amphibious assault. The DD tanks provide immediate fire support for infantry landing on the beaches, a capability that conventional invasion planning assumed would be impossible. Open fire on the swimming tanks, Weber orders, but his gunners are struggling to engage targets that don't behave like conventional armor. The DD tanks are moving in ways that German anti-tank training never covered, approaching from unexpected directions and using tactics that seem to ignore established principles of armored warfare. The psychological impact of the swimming tanks is as important as their tactical capability. German defenders who have been trained to expect conventional landing craft and infantry assaults suddenly find themselves facing armored vehicles that appear to emerge from the sea itself. It's like fighting ghosts, reports Gefreiter Otto Schneider, a machine gunner who has been watching the DD tanks through his sights. They appear from nowhere, they move in impossible ways, and they seem to ignore the rules of warfare. But the DD tanks are just the beginning of the mechanical nightmare that Hobart has unleashed on the German defenders. As the initial wave of swimming tanks establishes a foothold on the beach, the second wave brings even more exotic vehicles designed to solve specific problems that conventional forces cannot handle. Minefields ahead, reports Lieutenant James Morrison, commanding one of the DD tanks that has successfully made it ashore. Extensive wire obstacles and what appears to be a comprehensive defensive minefield. The minefield that Morrison has identified represents exactly the kind of obstacle that would stop conventional armor and force infantry to clear it by hand, a process that would take hours and cost hundreds of lives. But Hobart's engineers have anticipated this problem and developed a solution that defies conventional military thinking. Crab tanks, advance and clear, orders Major Robert Chen, commanding the Specialized Armor Support Unit. Beat us a path through Jerry's minefield. The Sherman crab tanks that respond to Chen's order look like mechanical threshing machines. Their rotating drums covered with heavy chains that beat the ground in front of them with enough force to detonate buried mines. It's a brute force solution to the minefield problem that clears safe passages in minutes rather than hours. What in God's name is that? Weber asks as he watches the crab tanks advance toward his carefully prepared minefield, their chains beating the ground in a rhythm that sounds like mechanical thunder. The sound of the crab tanks becomes one of the most terrifying aspects of the D-Day assault for German defenders, a mechanical drumbeat that announces the systematic destruction of defensive obstacles that took months to prepare. "They're destroying our minefields," reports Unteroffizier Franz Kruger, watching through binoculars as the crab tanks methodically clear paths through the defensive barriers. "The chains are detonating the mines faster than we can count the explosions." The effectiveness of the crab tanks in clearing minefields demonstrates the power of Hobart's approach to specialized armor. Instead of trying to fight through obstacles, his vehicles eliminate them entirely, creating new tactical possibilities that German defensive doctrine never anticipated. But the most psychologically devastating of Hobart's vehicles is yet to come. As the crab tanks finish clearing paths through the minefields, the third wave of specialized armor brings weapons that attack not just German positions, but German morale. "Churchill crocodiles, advance to contact," Chen orders, as the flamethrower tanks move forward to engage the concrete bunkers that have been providing covering fire for the German defensive positions. The Churchill crocodile that responds to Chen's order looks like a conventional tank towing a trailer, but the trailer contains 400 gallons of flamethrower fuel, and the tank's main gun has been replaced with a weapon that can project burning liquid over 120 yards with devastating accuracy. "Flamethrower tank," Weber shouts into his radio as he realizes what's approaching his position. "All units, flamethrower tank approaching from the beach. Request immediate anti-tank support." But anti-tank support designed to fight conventional armor is inadequate against a weapon that doesn't need to penetrate defensive positions. It simply needs to cook the defenders alive inside them. The first burst of flame from the crocodile engulfs a German machine gun position in liquid fire that burns at over 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt steel and certainly hot enough to make concrete bunkers uninhabitable for anyone inside them. "Mein Gott, they're burning us alive," screams Schneider as flame pours through the firing slits of his bunker, forcing him and his crew to abandon their position or face incineration. The psychological impact of the flamethrower tanks proves even more devastating than their physical effects. German soldiers who have been trained to fight conventional weapons find themselves facing a form of warfare that seems designed specifically to create terror rather than just inflict casualties. "It's not just a weapon," observes Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a military psychologist who has been studying the effects of Hobart's vehicles on enemy morale. "It's a psychological attack that undermines the fundamental sense of safety that soldiers derive from defensive positions. The combination of swimming tanks, minefield clearing vehicles, and flamethrower tanks creates a synergistic effect that overwhelms German defensive capabilities in ways that no single weapon system could achieve. "They're not fighting like conventional armor," Weber reports to his regimental headquarters, as his defensive positions are systematically eliminated by Hobart's vehicles. These machines are designed specifically to counter our defensive tactics. It's as if they knew exactly what obstacles we would prepare and built weapons to defeat them. Weber's assessment is more accurate than he realizes. Hobart's vehicles have been designed based on detailed intelligence about German defensive preparations, creating specialized solutions for specific problems that conventional forces would find insurmountable. We studied Jerry's defensive doctrine for 2 years, Hobart explains to war correspondents who are documenting the success of his vehicles. We identified every obstacle, every defensive technique, every tactical assumption. Then we built machines specifically designed to defeat each one. But the most innovative aspect of Hobart's system isn't the individual vehicles. It's the way they work together to solve complex tactical problems that would overwhelm any single weapon system. "Watch how they coordinate," observes Captain Danny Washington, an American liaison officer who has been studying British specialized armor tactics. The DD tanks establish a beachhead, the crabs clear the minefields, the crocodiles eliminate the bunkers, and conventional armor exploits the breakthrough. It's like watching a mechanical ballet. The coordination between different types of specialized vehicles requires new forms of tactical thinking and communication that go far beyond conventional armored warfare doctrine. Each vehicle commander has to understand not just his own capabilities, but how his machine fits into the larger tactical picture, explains Major Michael O'Brien, who has been training crews for Hobart's vehicles. A crab tank commander needs to know where the DD tanks are going to land, where the crocodiles need to advance, and how conventional armor will exploit the paths he clears. The tactical complexity of coordinating multiple types of specialized vehicles creates new challenges for both British and German forces, as conventional military training proves inadequate for dealing with the realities of specialized armor warfare. Our anti-tank doctrine assumes we're fighting conventional tanks with conventional tactics, admits Oberst Heinrich Lehmann, a German armor specialist who has been analyzing reports from Normandy. These British vehicles don't follow conventional patterns. They require completely new defensive approaches. But developing new defensive approaches takes time that German forces don't have, as Hobart's vehicles continue to demonstrate their effectiveness in breaking through defensive positions that were considered impregnable. The Atlantic Wall was designed to stop conventional amphibious assaults, observes Colonel Patricia Martinez, a military historian studying the D-Day operations. Hobart's vehicles have made those defenses obsolete by solving the specific problems they were designed to create. The obsolescence of German defensive doctrine in the face of specialized armor represents a fundamental shift in the nature of armored warfare, as the emphasis moves from fighting enemy tanks to overcoming enemy obstacles. "We're not just building better tanks," Hobart tells his engineering team as they analyze the success of their vehicles in Normandy. "We're changing the rules of armored warfare. Jerry's going to have to completely rethink his approach to defensive operations." The success of Hobart's vehicles in Normandy validates his unconventional approach to armored warfare and proves that specialized vehicles can be more effective than conventional tanks in specific tactical situations. But it also reveals the limitations of specialized armor and the importance of integrating it with conventional forces. "The Funnies are incredibly effective for their specific missions," observes Lieutenant Colonel Tommy Kowalski, who has been commanding one of the specialized armor units. "But they're vulnerable once they've completed their primary tasks. They need conventional armor to protect them and exploit the opportunities they create." The vulnerability of specialized vehicles after completing their missions becomes an important factor in tactical planning, as commanders learn to coordinate the employment of Hobart's vehicles with conventional forces to maximize their effectiveness while minimizing their exposure to enemy counterattacks. But the most important lesson of the Normandy operations may be the demonstration that innovation and unconventional thinking can overcome experience and establish doctrine when the stakes are high enough and the innovation is thorough enough. Hobart's vehicles succeeded because they solved real problems in innovative ways, concludes Dr. David Park, a military analyst studying the D-Day operations. They didn't just improve on existing capabilities, they created entirely new capabilities that change the nature of the battlefield. The transformation of the battlefield through specialized armor represents both a tactical victory and a strategic revolution that will influence armored warfare doctrine for decades to come. August 15, 1944. Falaise Pocket, France. The German Army Group B is trapped in a rapidly shrinking cauldron, and Hobart's specialized vehicles are playing a crucial role in preventing German forces from escaping the Allied encirclement. The success of the D-Day landings has validated Hobart's approach to specialized armor, but the continuing campaign in Normandy reveals both the evolving capabilities of his vehicles and the German attempts to develop countermeasures against them. Jerry's learning, observes Major Chen as he reviews intelligence reports on German anti-tank tactics. They're developing new techniques specifically designed to counter our specialized vehicles, concentrated anti-tank guns, improved camouflage, even specialized ammunition designed to defeat flamethrower tanks. The German adaptation to Hobart's vehicles represents the natural evolution of military technology and tactics as each side develops new capabilities to counter the other's innovations. But the pace of adaptation reveals the psychological impact that the specialized vehicles have had on German forces. The speed of their response tells us how much these vehicles have affected German thinking, explains Dr. Walsh during a briefing on enemy countermeasures. They're devoting significant resources to developing defenses against weapons that represent a tiny fraction of Allied armor strength. That suggests the psychological impact is far greater than the tactical impact. The psychological warfare aspect of Hobart's vehicles becomes increasingly important as the campaign progresses and German morale begins to deteriorate under the pressure of facing weapons they don't understand and can't predict. Prisoner interrogations reveal that German tank crews are more afraid of encountering our specialized vehicles than they are of facing conventional Sherman or Churchill tanks, reports Captain Washington during an intelligence briefing. They know how to fight conventional armor, but they feel helpless against machines that seem to violate the rules of warfare. The fear that Hobart's vehicles inspire among German tank crews reflects their understanding that conventional anti-tank tactics are ineffective against weapons designed for purposes other than tank versus tank combat. How do you fight a tank that swims? Asks Obergefreiter Müller during a debriefing after his unit's encounter with DD tanks during the Normandy fighting. How do you defend against a vehicle that clears minefields by beating them with chains? These machines change everything we know about armored warfare. Müller's questions reflect the broader challenge that German forces face in adapting to weapons that don't fit established categories of military equipment. The specialized nature of Hobart's vehicles makes them difficult to counter with conventional anti-tank weapons and tactics. The problem isn't just technical, it's conceptual, explains Oberst Lehmann during a German staff meeting on countering British specialized armor. Our anti-tank doctrine is based on the assumption that enemy tanks will behave like tanks. These British vehicles behave like engineering equipment, flamethrowers or amphibious craft. We need completely new approaches. But developing new approaches requires time, resources, and most importantly, accurate intelligence about the capabilities and limitations of Hobart's vehicles, information that remains closely guarded by British security measures. We're maintaining operational security by compartmentalizing information about vehicle capabilities, explains Major O'Brien during a security briefing. Even our own forces only know what they need to know about specific vehicles. Jerry's intelligence services are getting fragments of information, but not the complete picture. The fragmented intelligence available to German forces creates confusion and uncertainty that multiplies the psychological impact of Hobart's vehicles, as enemy commanders are forced to plan defenses against threats they don't fully understand. The uncertainty is as effective as the weapons themselves, Hobart observes during a review of operational effectiveness. Jerry knows we have specialized vehicles, but he doesn't know what they can do or where we'll use them. That forces him to prepare for everything, which means he's not optimally prepared for anything. The strategic impact of forcing German forces to prepare for multiple types of specialized threats becomes apparent as the campaign progresses and German defensive resources are spread thin across a wide range of potential countermeasures. Intelligence reports suggest that German forces are deploying anti-tank guns specifically positioned to counter flamethrower tanks. Even in areas where no flamethrower tanks are present, reports Lieutenant Morrison during an operational briefing, they're wasting resources defending against threats that may not exist. The misallocation of German defensive resources represents one of the most important strategic effects of Hobart's specialized vehicles, as their mere existence forces enemy commanders to make defensive preparations that reduce their overall effectiveness. But the continued success of specialized armor also reveals its limitations and the importance of evolving tactics to maintain effectiveness against adapting enemies. The Germans are getting better at countering our vehicles, admits Lieutenant Colonel Kowalski during an after-action review. They're using concentrated anti-tank fire, improved camouflage, and even specialized ammunition designed to defeat our armor. We need to adapt our tactics to maintain our advantage. The adaptation of tactics to counter German countermeasures leads to the development of new employment methods for Hobart's vehicles, emphasizing surprise, coordination with conventional forces, and rapid exploitation of breakthrough opportunities. We're learning to use the vehicles in combination with conventional armor and infantry, explains Colonel Martinez during a tactical briefing. The specialized vehicles create opportunities, but conventional forces have to exploit them quickly before Jerry can respond. The integration of specialized and conventional forces becomes increasingly sophisticated as the campaign progresses, creating combined arms teams that can overcome obstacles and exploit opportunities more effectively than either type of unit operating alone. The key is timing and coordination, observes Chen as he analyzes successful operations. Specialized vehicles solve specific problems, but they have to be supported by conventional forces that can exploit the solutions they create. But perhaps the most important development in the employment of Hobart's vehicles is their adaptation to new roles and missions that go beyond their original design parameters. We're using crocodile flamethrower tanks for urban warfare, crab tanks for clearing roadblocks, and even DD tanks for river crossing operations, reports Major Park during a briefing on vehicle employment. The crews are finding new applications for their specialized equipment that we never anticipated. The creative employment of specialized vehicles by their crews demonstrates the flexibility and adaptability that characterize effective military innovation, as operators discover new capabilities and applications through practical experience. The vehicles are more versatile than we originally thought, Hobart tells his engineering team during a review of operational reports. The crews are teaching us things about our own machines that we didn't know when we designed them. The feedback from operational experience leads to continuous improvements in vehicle design and employment doctrine, creating an iterative development process that enhances effectiveness while addressing operational limitations. We are constantly modifying and improving the vehicles based on combat experience, explains Dr. Walsh during a briefing on the development program. The machines that are fighting in France today are significantly different from the ones that landed on D-Day. The evolution of Hobart's vehicles through combat experience represents the natural maturation of military technology, as theoretical capabilities are tested against practical requirements and modified to enhance effectiveness. But the most important measure of the vehicle's success may be their influence on German tactical thinking and the broader evolution of armored warfare doctrine. German forces are completely reorganizing their anti-tank defenses to counter specialized armor threats, reports intelligence analyst Captain Jennifer Chen. They're developing new weapons, new tactics, and new organizational structures specifically designed to deal with vehicles like ours. The German response to Hobart's vehicles validates their effectiveness and demonstrates their strategic impact on enemy operations, as significant resources are diverted from other priorities to counter the specialized armor threat. The fact that Jerry is changing his entire approach to anti-tank warfare proves that our vehicles have fundamentally altered the nature of armored combat, Hobart observes with satisfaction. We've forced him to rethink everything he knows about defensive operations. The war continues until May 1945, but the influence of Hobart's specialized vehicles extends far beyond their immediate tactical success. The principles of specialized armor design and employment become standard doctrine for military forces around the world. What Hobart demonstrated, concludes military historian Dr. David Martinez in his post-war analysis, is that specialized vehicles designed for specific missions can be more effective than conventional tanks in certain tactical situations. His work established the foundation for modern combat engineering and specialized armor development. The legacy of Hobart's Funnies includes not just their immediate impact on World War II operations, but their influence on military thinking about the relationship between technology and tactics, the importance of innovation in warfare, and the value of challenging conventional assumptions about military equipment. Hobart's greatest contribution wasn't the vehicles themselves, observes General Omar Bradley in his memoirs. It was the demonstration that unconventional thinking could solve conventional problems in ways that traditional approaches couldn't match. Hobart retires from active duty in 1946 as a full general. His reputation transformed from eccentric outsider to visionary innovator, whose ideas revolutionized armored warfare. He returns to civilian life as a consultant and lecturer, continuing to advocate for innovative approaches to military problems. The lesson of the Funnies, Hobart tells a gathering of military engineers in 1950, is that every problem has a solution if you're willing to think beyond conventional approaches. The key is understanding the problem clearly, and then designing solutions specifically for that problem, rather than trying to adapt existing solutions. The lesson of Hobart's Funnies isn't just about the effectiveness of specialized armor or the importance of innovation in military technology. It's about the courage to challenge conventional wisdom when conventional approaches prove inadequate, the value of designing solutions for specific problems rather than trying to create universal weapons, and the understanding that sometimes the most effective military equipment is the kind that looks completely insane to conventional thinking. Hobart's success came from his willingness to abandon traditional assumptions about tank design and create vehicles optimized for specific missions rather than general combat effectiveness. His specialized armor proved that innovation could overcome experience when the innovation was thorough enough and the application was appropriate. The psychological impact of Hobart's vehicles also demonstrates the importance of uncertainty and unpredictability in military operations, as weapons that don't fit established categories create fear and confusion that can be as effective as physical destruction. Stories like this remind us that the most effective innovations often come from those who are willing to be considered eccentric or unconventional, that specialized solutions can be more effective than general-purpose approaches when properly applied, and that the courage to think differently can create advantages that no amount of conventional superiority can match. That's what we explore here. The moments when unconventional thinking creates revolutionary capabilities, when specialized solutions prove more effective than general approaches, when the willingness to be considered crazy becomes the foundation for changing the rules of warfare itself. If you believe these stories matter, if you want to understand the power of innovation and the importance of challenging conventional wisdom, then subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell, because there are so many more stories like this one waiting to be told with the depth and respect they deserve. You won't want to miss what we discover next.